Thank you, Debbie, as always. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marla Crawford. I'm the General Counsel of Cimplifi, an integrated legal services technology provider. And today I have three phenomenal panelists who are going to join me in discussing empowering justice, harnessing AI to expand legal access. We're going to talk about when technology meets purpose and artificial intelligence and how it's being used to expand access to justice. I have with me today Maya Markovich, Jaclyn Sattler, and Glenn Rawdon. And we're going to get started by asking our panelists to introduce themselves. So, Maya, would you mind kicking us off, please?
Sure, happy to be here. And thank you so much for including me. My name is Maya Markovich. I am the Vice President of the AAA ICDR Institute, which is the think tank and R&D and thought leadership arm of the American Arbitration Association. I am also Executive Director and founder of the Justice Tech Association, which is a nonprofit trade organization that represents founders that are building access to justice technology.
Thank you, Maya. And I omitted to mention that if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I will read them and at the appropriate time, ask the panelists. The more questions, the better. We love hearing from you. Next, Jaclyn, would you mind introducing your fabulous self?
Thank you. Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaclyn Sattler. And while I may not have followed my parents' dream of being a lawyer, I did the next best thing, work at a technology company that empowers them. So I've worked at Relativity for about 6.5 years now in various strategy and operations roles. And what I'm most proud of is being a co-founder of Relativity's Justice for Change program, which really seeks to create a world where technology evens the playing field and equipping organizations with free access to our tools to help support those social justice matters. Really excited to chat today.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And last but not least, Glenn.
Thank you. I'm Glenn Rawdon. I've been working with legal aid technology since we used 8-inch floppy disk. Last year, I retired from the Legal Services Corporation, the federal funder for civil legal aid, where I spent 25 years there working with our programs, specifically with a technology initiative grant program that I started in 2000, and with helping them with the problems that they have with access to justice and using technology, including starting the Innovations in Technology Conference, which started with 32 people, and last year hosted over 700 legal aid and court and academics from across the country to learn more about access to justice and technology.
Well, that's something to really be proud of, Glenn. Thank you for that and for your storied career. We're going to kick off by discussing the landscape. What are we trying to solve for? What how can access to justice be expanded, and who can be helped when we add the special sauce of artificial intelligence? And Glenn, let's stick with you. What do you see as the problem to solve? And I know you have a notion of various tiers of users, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure, Marla. As everybody knows, legal aid is woefully underfunded in this country. I don't know if you've ever put the math to it, but LSC gets less than $10 per poor person per year to fund legal aid across the country and the territories. And you can imagine how much legal aid you can provide for somebody for $10. And so we learned long ago that we couldn't help everybody with legal aid. And particularly, we know that at least 1 out of every 2 people that applies doesn't get any services at all. They just can't afford to. It's not an entitlement program. So the idea of when I started the technology grants, the TIG program, was to get our programs using technology to provide resources for those people that we could not assist. And when we did that, we came up with basically a legal aid pyramid. And at the bottom of the pyramid will be the people who, if they had the actual resources, could probably help themselves. They're computer literate. They've got a fairly simple legal problem. Maybe it's an uncontested divorce with no children and no property, but they don't know how to do that. And so one of the ideas is to provide that level of service to those people so that they have the websites, the online forums, maybe some instructional videos that will help them get through that process. Then the next layer that we have of the pyramid is those people that need a little bit more help. And that's what we call assisted pro se, so that they can contact the legal aid program. We can point them to the resources. They can go out, look at the resources, get back with legal aid or pro bono attorney, or even limited scope representation from a private attorney that would kind of guide them through the process, walk them through what they need to do, maybe review the pleadings with them. And then at the top of the pyramid, we had the most vulnerable, those with the most complicated problems that really need full representation. And the idea is if we can assist the people at the bottom two levels using technology, that provides more legal aid attorneys to actually help those people who need the full representation level of assistance to resolve their legal problem.
I love that, Glenn, because there's a lot of talk nowadays about AI replacing humans. And in your vision, the technology and the AI is enhancing the ability of humans to help more people.
Yeah, we call it human-centered AI help here. We don't see it eliminating people.
That's great. Maya, if I could please turn to you. If you could tell us a little bit about your landscape, what you see as problems to solve, and I know you also have three important categorizations of users.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think AI can definitely help in a few instances, and with the very important caveat that it is ethically built and with appropriate guardrails around the data that's being used, as well as the workflows and the use cases that are being envisioned for the use of the AI generative AI based tool. I mean, it can help across the board. It can help courts streamline their very manual workflows. For example, with diversion programs, we've seen some success with automating eligibility screening so that more people can be diverted from court calendars onto arbitration and mediation calendars to get better and faster results and help the courts be less overwhelmed. Law schools, of course, are incredibly critical to the whole puzzle. We need to have obviously lawyers in training be trained on the tools that are going to be used in law in their law practice. In a few short years, they need to definitely be up to speed, and law schools need to do their part in making sure that their graduates are practice ready, no matter what practice they will be in. And of course, individuals, as Glenn mentioned, I think it's really important to remember that 92% of people that need legal help do not get it in the United States. So that is well beyond who is below the poverty level. That's small to medium businesses, that's middle income families, that's everybody except those that can afford legal assistance for any of the myriad problems that that can come down the pike in the course of their everyday lives. Not to mention with business, like as I mentioned, small to medium businesses. So I think the problem really to solve, and that AI can solve, it's almost so obvious that it's embarrassing to say it, but that we need to solve access. We need to solve the ability to level the playing field so that you don't have to have money to have rights.
Thank you. 92% is really a staggering number. And I will go out on a limb and guess that most people in the world have no idea that that number is so high.
Yeah,
But
even including lawyers.
including
In our
lawyers.
own practice, we don't realize how little of the market we're serving.
But let's talk, Jaclyn, let's talk about what you're doing to help expand access to justice. What are the problems and user groups. And I will say that my company is a proud partner with you of Relativity's Justice for Change. And not only have we done so much good for people who need access to justice, but it's also such a lift for our own employees when they have the opportunity to work on these matters. It's really a perk in our company to get to work with Relativity. So thank you, and let us hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. The pleasure is ours to have this broad community really be a part of the access to justice conversation. I'd say the problems we're seeing and trying to solve are twofold. One is definitely what Marla touched on is the opportunity to increase the types of partnerships and co-working together. And the other is just size of firms and the varying needs that they have and how to adapt accordingly. So to start on that second one, we really want to acknowledge access to justice looks different depending on how big your firm is, and that means you have different needs. So on the side of, a sole practitioner firm, they might not have a lot of resources, headcount, or even tech tools at all to compete with those large players on opposing counsel. They might be eager to use AI to make their job easier, but they lack budget and access. So through programs like Justice for Change or others, and getting access to tech tools could remove that issue just by simply providing access, pairing them with an expert in the tech, all without cost, so that they can compete against any player, no matter how big they are, and increase the number of clients that they can serve, which is an amazing benefit. But you see on the other side, for these large firms, they usually have very robust pro bono programs, and we don't want to discount that at all. So the problems they might see is that how do they introduce new tools or overcome unfamiliarity with AI? So in those scenarios, leveraging a pro bono matter is an awesome opportunity to expose attorneys and their partners to tools they might not normally be able to deploy and use that to prove out the business case for the tech, develop their own internal expertise, and truly then maximize the impact that they can do in their practice. And hopefully bring that over then into the commercial side and all the goodness that they've learned and what they've learned from those tools. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't go back though to the original point about partnerships, because a lot of folks are eager to get their hands on these latest tech tools and pursue access to justice, but they don't know like what their role is and how do they fit in. So I think the secret sauce is truly getting inspired, empowered individuals to talk to each other and to partner together. So we see a lot of legal services partners like Cimplifi and many others who may not be litigators themselves, but have an extreme amount of expertise in the legal field, and they have an important role to play. If you return to that sole practitioner example, it might not make sense to give them a robust piece of technology or piece of AI and say, hey, good luck. But if you pair them then with a service provider, not only do they get access to that technology, but coaching on the best practices they've seen for how to progress with their investigation, how to formulate a data request, what prompts are the best to use, and terms to use to yield really the best outcome and uncover the insights for the case. So all that's to say is I love this conversation. I love all the tools that are out there, and none of us should be doing it alone. The more that we can start to find those insights and share the tools and share the resources together, I think the better outcomes we have for access to justice.
Thank you, Jaclyn. That's very inspiring. Now let's talk AI tech. Let's talk about what we're seeing. Maya, you could talk about this for days and days and days, so I'm not exactly sure how you're going to synthesize all that you know and all that you've seen, but let's give it a try.
So yeah, no, thank you. And I feel like I did talk about it for 4 days straight last week when we saw each other at the conference. So yeah, so I mean, I can just give some examples of where you can see aggregation in the market taking place. So first of all, the Legal Tech Hub and Justice Tech Association collaborated to create a Justice Tech map. Was the first map created of global justice tech solutions, which are otherwise known as mission focused and mission driven tech solutions. It had also included a section for legal tech tools that are typically for firms as opposed to tech for law firms instead of law for people. But the section included, of course, Relativity, and it had a number of other companies that are providing, like Everlaw, for example, that are providing their tools at no or very low cost for legal aid organizations and other access to justice focused organizations. We also have created in partnership with the Duke Center for Law and Technology and LSNTAP, the tech arm essentially of LSC, a Justice Tech Directory, which is a list of vetted companies that are mission focused, building ethical technology directly for folks that can't afford attorneys on their own. And though that directory is another aggregating force that is currently in use at self-help departments and legal aid organizations. And it's very easy to deploy. Please let me know if anyone is interested. And I would say just generally, the examples that we have. Actually, I'd be remiss if I didn't say Justice Tech Association itself is almost 4 years old, and we have really quite almost unexpectedly to us as founders become a really strong kind of the center of the wheel in terms of building an ecosystem of mission focused legal technology, which is almost always, but not always, powered by generative AI. Those tools, they run the gamut, everything from I could talk about use cases or I could talk about practice areas or people's problems, but they address everything from employment issues to bankruptcy to divorce to child custody to wills and trusts, and a whole array of basically of problems that people encounter in their lives, and there are tools that are built with consumer benefit in mind, to help them be prepared to represent themselves. Um, I'll leave it at that, I guess.
Thank you. I mean, those are real solutions to real people's issues that they deal with day in and day out and makes a huge difference in our society. With that, let's turn it to Jaclyn. Relativity is doing a lot with technology, with AI, to improve and expand access to justice. So tell us about what you're seeing from the inside.
Of course. And I'd also say we're incredibly grateful to be part of the broader landscape of the justice map. And we are but one solution of many really wonderful things out there to continue to close the gap. But what we're seeing is that, especially when there are large, massive amounts of data involved, that's really where AI can be a differentiator. It can help you in scenarios relating to impact litigation, reports for policy recommendations, or just being a force multiplier for a legal aid group, a pro bono group, and a nonprofit group. But specifically, what Relativity does through the Justice for Change program is, we took on, or through our large ecosystem of folks, supporting more than 250 matters across 90 organizations, giving them access to this technology, giving them a grant to help with matters relating from wrongful convictions and innocence work to protecting tenants and holding housing authorities accountable, or just ensuring disability rights and other health equity topics. But the really cool part is that it's a Gen AI tool that we can put into folks' hands, like our Air for Review and other tools like Translate, to really help them manage these large swaths of documents and get to the insights faster. So I'm happy to talk about the tools themselves and things you were seeing within there, but I'll pause here.
Thanks, Jaclyn. I mean, one of the things I am interested in, and I've seen with this tech and other tech, is just the ability to translate into a person's language makes
Mhm.
so much difference.
I think that's 100% true. And we've been seeing, even through the program, there was a human rights advocacy group based in the EU building a case about war crimes, about an ongoing conflict. And so they were dealing with multiple countries involved, speaking in multiple languages. And then they were able to sift through hundreds of Word documents, PDFs, photos, videos, audio files, and taking these in multiple countries, multiple languages, but turning it into a searchable repository for their team of investigators, that's a game changer for their mission of accountability where they can all speak the same language without truly having to do so because of technology and access to AI.
Fantastic. Love that. Glenn, tell us about your perspective of how AI can help, particularly with triage, intake, and content creation.
Sure. One of the issues we've always had with legal aid is, the demand. There's so many more people that look for help than can possibly be helped. And so any tools that we can build to kind of help those people to get other resources and to help us make better decisions on who we can help are going to be very useful. Um, I think everybody probably remembers the ABA study that Rebecca Sandiford did well over a decade ago now that talked about many people who have legal problems don't even recognize that they're legal problems. So one of the things that I worked on with Suffolk University, David Calaruso there, was creating an issue spotter called Spot. And the idea was we wanted people to come in and describe what issue they were having in their own language, and then helping them decide if there is a legal issue, and if so, where that legal issue fits on the spectrum of remedies. I went to a subgroup of Reddit and got the moderators there to give us a list of all the questions that people had asked. This was a place people could ask on Reddit, legal questions. So we took that list of questions and then we worked with Stanford University to set up something that they called Learned Hands, which I thought was very clever, where people could go in, they could look at the questions that these people had asked and not give the answers, but help classify them. What type of question was this? Was this a family law? Was this a housing law? Was this a benefits law question? And then Spot at at Suffolk University, the tool they created would look at the language that people would ask, look at the questions that had been asked, how they were classified, and help people identify that they actually had a problem. Another thing that we do is to help people find the actual materials on the website rather than just doing a search bot. They could go into an AI powered engine to help them drill down and curate and come up with a content on the website that was curated for their specific information that they needed, not just, here's a PDF, on family law, but it would actually look at what the issues they need and could actually make them a list of these different steps that they would need to actually take care of the problem. This is something that we worked on called Legal Navigator. So this is just something that's really going to be important for legal aid and for the public to be able to refine how that we do that. My vision eventually is that we'll have an agent that will help with the qualifications financially of people, because that's very time consuming. I've always felt sorry for the person who has to spend 15 minutes getting qualified for legal aid, only then to find out that we can't help them because that's outside our priorities. So all of this type of intelligence can be built into there. And then something else, Marla, that you touched on is translations. There's two types of translations that I see it's going to be very useful. One is lawyers talk like lawyers. We don't even know that we're doing it. And if you read a lot of the legal information that's out there, you can tell it's written by lawyers. And the idea is we can use AI to help us translate this into plain language without losing the actual meanings. This is something that, I've been working with a group in California called Transcend.net for years on how we can do a better job of doing the plain language translations. And then also you talked about the different languages. It may not be 100% correct to use some of these translation tools, but some of our studies found out that it could save 70 to 75% of the time it took to translate them if we let the first iteration be done by a translation tool and then had, as we talked about earlier, a person actually review this to be sure that it's correct, but they don't have to do it all from scratch. So I see these as very good tools that we'll be able to use to help us with our intake and with providing content to people. Maybe using something like Notebook LM. I don't know if you've played with it. It's a free tool from Google. You can basically take a PDF document, upload it, and in a few minutes, it will generate a podcast of two people discussing what was in that document. And they're even going to make that available where you can do it as a video as well. So all kinds of great tools that are really going to help us get information to the public.
You know, I'm thinking about really feeling humbled because I spend so much time talking with people about whether AI is going to replace humans in various um, tasks along the legal spectrum. And today I'm just reminded about how technology is able to enhance access to justice and free up humans to help more people. And I have to say, as an industry, as a legal industry, this is a very humbling thing to think about and something we should probably talk about more. And with that, Maya, if you would please tell us about what do you think about some current opportunities that will increase access to justice through using technology in some specific areas?
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of examples, and I welcome the chance to have this be a series or something. I think it would be great. There's so many wonderful people working on this kind of thing and just incredibly driven and devoted to improving justice equity. So I would say number one, well, I think it's important to mention that that the Justice Tech Association founders that we represent that are building this technology, and they're on the front lines out there trying to survive and build tools that will fit in with regulatory constraints and also build as much as possible and scale to help as many people as possible. They have got, you know, it's all over the map, like I mentioned. I mean, I would say specifically in terms of the types of things that they can help with. Anything, just a lot of what Glenn mentioned already, right? Helping with intake, document assembly, using a chat bot to help them have guided interview questions that could be used for intake, document assembly, or a number of different things. The translation is incredibly important. And as Glenn pointed out, also, that's not just, and I mean, the whole conversation we've had so far, that translation isn't just from foreign languages, but also legalese, which is incredibly important to remember and meeting the users where they are. Also, I will just mention that the best solutions as every VC knows, are built by those with lived experience with the problem they're trying to solve. And many of the Justice Tech founders that I work with really closely come from underrepresented groups, and the challenge, of course, for them is they have the best experience. They're going to build the best products, but they're the farthest from uh, from the network and the power and the money and the resources. So um, there is always an opportunity to align publicly with Justice Tech Association. Just throw that out there. If any firms or organizations are interested in doing that, there are ways that we can deploy our support through that support. I would also wanted to mention, of course, at AAA, we had some exciting news a couple of weeks ago where we built and released the first AI arbitrator. And that was for a very narrow use case, trained on our, decades and decades of our data. And that was specifically for an opt-in tool for construction disputes under $50,000 in and documents only submission. So that is obviously opt-in. We actually think that the small to medium businesses, medium-sized businesses, and self-represented folks might be some of the earliest adopters because they are. It promises a faster, quicker, and hopefully good result out of the use of the strictly AI arbitrator. We are going to be developing. I don't even want to say the number because I'm not sure what it is right now, but a number of additional use cases around that. And so we're looking forward to seeing how that plays out. And then I would also just say that the idea of increasing mission focused on increasing access to justice is something we all share. And I think that there are just so many different ways to go about it. And as Jaclyn mentioned, we need as many people as possible working on that.
Thank you, Maya. Jaclyn or Glenn, do you have any ideas that you'd like to share about specific areas of the law or use cases to use AI to increase access to justice?
I think that for me, and there's already some examples of this. Some of the things to help people through routine problems that they're going to have all the time. One of the tools that I really like is called Rocks and the Rent, something that was developed in New York City to help people who need repairs. And so this is, this is the type of issue somebody comes in and they need something specific about, okay, my water's not working or this is not working. How do I resolve this problem? And you can build something like the Roxanne tool that they built there in New York City so that it has vetted information that's specific to this particular type of legal problem that will help the people see, oh, well, there's this specific court that you can go into. A lot of places have repair courts. I know that DC had one. So if you needed a repair, you went to this court and you filed suit against your landlord to get those repairs done. But people don't know how to do that. I think also it's going to be very useful for coaching people on how to perform in court, because this is something that I think a conversational type of thing with an AI would be very useful for people to kind of practice their presentation, maybe give them a critique of what they're doing. We worked with a design school a few years ago to do some, video game type of thing, so that when you stood up in court and you had on shorts and a floppy hat or something like that, you got feedback about whether or not that was presentable. So I think some very specific things like that, especially around housing issues, will be very useful.
Anything, Jaclyn?
Of course, to add to that, I would say the more the merrier. I don't actually think that there is an area of the law that couldn't benefit from an access to justice solution. So I think a lot of the things Glenn had discussed is how to help a lot of individuals seeking help with what feels like low-hanging fruit, but is really hard for those individuals to do on their own and could benefit from the collective legal expertise and the tools that consolidate that for them, exactly what Glenn had shared. But I would also wonder if you were a different type of larger firm that works on either research and policy areas or big impact litigation, that's equally an area where you could see a true use case for AI. I'm thinking of an example of even if you're at, a law school or working in a legal clinic, there was a scenario where we had found one of the Innocence Network groups had partnered with both a large law firm and a law firm or a law school clinic to review various numbers of exoneration cases that had happened in their county. Because they had found that county alone accounted for about 20% of wrongful convictions in the state, which seemed disproportionately high. And they could then use like AI and tech tools to then investigate those convictions that were overturned to find the right patterns to not only help in future wrongful conviction litigation, but also identify bad actors, identify other legal arguments that they can use to make that easier. And, it's a unique opportunity where technology can help them not only harness the tools they don't have access to, but really engage also the future lawyers and bring into the conversation these law school students as well to get a better understanding of wrongful convictions and all the things it takes to prove those out. So I'd say a little bit of everything to answer your question.
Thank you.
I would just add to that, Jaclyn, it's something I've been really interested in learning more about is how technology like Relativity and others can help be a huge piece of the puzzle, which is impact litigation. And I think that's another part that I don't know as much about, but in fact, there's a webinar tomorrow I'm going to be listening to learn more about it with American Constitution Society. But I see a lot of potential there,
Mhm.
and that makes me really excited too.
Well, any discussion of tech and AI can't be had without a little bit of diversion into the risks and challenges. So, Jaclyn, if you don't mind, if we stay with you, let's talk about hallucinations and other issues that have arisen with AI and computer review.
With AI, I would say building trust is the most important thing at the end of the day. And those are the biggest challenges you'll see with any form of adoption for AI and technology alone. And so, what's important and what I would caution is when you're investigating a tool to use, to make sure that it passes the smell test of what is defensible, transparent, and what you would believe would stand up in court. And so there is concern and risk of hallucination, but oftentimes you'll find the tools and the providers that you work with will share their data of exactly how they defend against that. So for example, in Relativity's Air Suite, the products provide clear explanations for the results that you receive, and they cite exactly where in the documents they found it from. And those are results then that you can verify and then trust. And at the end of the day, that's what you would need to build into these solutions to guard against that type of risk.
Glenn, can you tell us a little bit about um, the faith in artificial intelligence that we need to have and the use of AI nationwide or locally, some of the risks and challenges you see?
One of the biggest risks I think that we have is with the public's use of AI to help them solve a legal problem, if it's not something that we've actually vetted and put together for them. I was able to work with the Stanford Law and Design School for a couple of semesters, and the students went to some of the local self-help centers to ask people there to use some of the earlier AI engines to help them with their legal research. They come into the self-help centers trying to find answers to their questions. And one of the things that they noticed was that the people used it just like they used a search engine. They might put like, I need a divorce, and that's all that they would say. They would just put in, very simple little queries like that, which is not really how you want to design a prompt to use for AI. So one of the things that they were talking about was designing what they called algorithmic education. And I think this is something that we have a responsibility as a legal community to actually do some courses that we can publish online, maybe on legal aid or court websites or something that kind of lets people understand, what Jaclyn was talking about with the hallucinations and all, let them know that everything that they get back is not 100% correct. Because that was one of the problems that the Stanford team saw was people thought it's artificial intelligence. If it tells it to me, it's correct. And the other problem is, like you said, is AI nationwide. If I go in and I start asking questions, it's not like medicine where, diseases are pretty much the same nationwide. Legal problems have local solutions. And so we need some way to train the public on the idea that you need a local solution for this. You can't just put in, how do I get a divorce? Because the AI engine might tell you Montana law when you're looking for Oklahoma law. And we've had this problem for years with trying to find the correct forms because they'll go online and do this. So I think this is going to be a huge problem for the courts is people coming in with the wrong information that they've gotten from AI, not because the information necessarily was hallucinated, because it's from the wrong jurisdiction. Now, one of the last grants I was able to piece together at LSE before I left was a grant where we have Texas, Ohio, Illinois, Oregon, Minnesota, West Virginia, and Minnesota working together to try to do some type of augmentation of the legal information they have on their websites and figuring out a way that we can build a limited language model that will have only vetted information and then present it to the public in such a way that it's accessible by jurisdiction. In other words, one of the questions will be early on, where are you? And we can make sure that it only returns vetted information for the local jurisdiction that they need this for. But I think these are two things that we really, the good thing about the algorithmic education is I think we could build that course one time and that could be nationwide because how to build a prompt and what to look out for is something that's going to be universal across the United States, unlike getting back specific information on a legal issue.
Thank you, Glenn. That's a very interesting perspective. And sometimes we do forget that we still are in, the justice system where jurisdictional differences apply. And I think that that's something that we need to look out for in terms of adoption and implementation.
I always remember working with a group in Ohio where they had to have different forms for the different judges in the same courthouse. And so, local rules are going to make this very difficult.
Absolutely. Um, Thank you. So, Maya, from your vantage point, I'm sure you see plenty of challenges to the implementation of AI. If you could tell us about some of them from your vantage point.
Sure. I mean, I completely agree with what Glenn and Jaclyn have already said. I think those are true, and something that we all should be probably remembering more often than we are, right? As we kind of launch into using it more and more. I think just to add on to what they're great answers. I think the first question is um, obviously accuracy is incredibly important, as is data security. I think the challenges, I mean, the risks are what they are, right? The challenges in terms of adoption, I think, when you're talking about like these, especially these individual tools, is number one, trust. People who use these tools quite often have very good reason not to trust where they would put their own sensitive data. So it's really important to keep building that trust through community interaction and support. Secondly, I would also say that it is important to look under the hood to see it's sort of the other side of the coin of what I just said, and looking under the hood into seeing like how are these tools being built? What is the data that they are using? Are they, are they focused on what's their business model like? Is it ultimately extractive from the communities that they're trying to support, or is it something that nets out as a benefit? Is it something that will increase trust in the justice system? This is something that we are really worried about right now. We should all be really worried about because there's a declining trust in our legal system as a functioning element of everyone's daily lives. And I think that keeping those types of challenges are only, um, I think they'll come more strongly into focus as things become sort of more. Um, we're just such early days still in terms of adoption, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we are asking the right questions.
Thank you. Okay. I like to sort of end on a high note always, if possible. So I'm going to ask each of you to tell us something good. Tell us a real life success story or two um, that really made you feel good. And how maybe can others get involved in this sort of experience? Glenn, let's start with you.
Well, the one I picked out was the Justice Hub that was done by the Legal Aid of North Carolina. This is I mentioned earlier how the challenge of intake, there's just such an overwhelming demand that we need to build tools to help us with this intake. And that's what North Carolina has done with the Justice Hub. And part of that Justice Hub is the Legal Information Assistant, which is built with AI to kind of help people walk through the process that they need, help them find legal information like we described before. And it's been very successful. It's getting a lot of use. They've got multilingual support. One of the great things is it's available 24/7. This is always something somebody in crisis doesn't necessarily work on a 9 to 5 type of basis with their crisis. And so this is just, I think, a really good example of what can be done with this. Now, the bad news is I went there today just to check to see how it was doing, and there's a little thing across the top talking about how funding cuts has made it difficult for them to do their intake process that they're doing. And so, I mean, this is just, one of those things of, without the resources financially, it's still going to be difficult no matter how good our technology is. And so you said since 1 or 2, another one that I had a lot of work on the Legal Navigator project with the Alaska court system, and they have built their AVA system with LawDroid, which is using a chatbot type of system to help users of the court's website there. They call it AVA. And so I think that's something that people ought to check out too, because it's not just legal aid that's building those. If you take that and then Roxanne, I mean, people are seeing that there's lots of real world places where they can build these, as Tom explained it to me, he did it so that it would look at the information that's on that website. And if it doesn't find the information people are requesting on that website, it says, I don't know, rather than hallucinating. So I think those are really good examples, Marla, that people could look at. I've just, like I said, really discouraged when I saw the North Carolina complaining about their funding cuts. So.
Understood. Maya, tell us something good.
Well, I feel like I've told I've been sort of like talking about all the great stuff all the way through. So thank you for bearing with me on all the big news that we've got going on. But one other thing I just wanted to mention that I think has been incredibly um, useful and transformative for a lot of people was an organization I as part of Justice Tech Association and as a member of the advisory board at LexLab, which is a legal and tech focused program, essentially with a few different areas of focus at UC Law SF, which is formerly UC Hastings, which is my alma mater as well. And so I've been working with them on helping them with their legal tech accelerator that they've had for a few years. And for the last 2 years, we've also created a separate version on the alternating semester with justice tech companies, so just mission focused legal tech companies. And that program it's a really great program because it's hybrid, it's lightweight, it's easy for the entrepreneurs um, to participate in. There's a ever-growing monetary prize due to some great partners that continue to come in. Law firms in the San Francisco Bay Area are interested in not only supporting it, but their lawyers can be mentors for the startups. The students get access to not only the technology, but also understanding what it's like to found a tech company. And so and we've seen really great results from the 2 cohorts that have participated. They've gone on to get, very good funding in many situations, growing and really scaling their impact.
That's great. Jaclyn, tell me something good.
So the example I'll share, it feels really personal to me since it is really impacting the community and where I live and work. And so as part of the Justice for Change program, there was an individual who had unfortunately spent 29 years, 4 months, and 7 days across 4 maximum security prisons. And throughout the process, there was really one individual who was continuing to go to bat for them to help them get their justice. And so this one-man shop then had received a huge, massive data dump of 1,300 hours of prisoner calls that had to be transcribed, leveraged, searched, used to formulate the arguments for their case. And this one at least comes with a wonderfully happy ending where they had uncovered that the reason this individual was in prison was a coerced confession. There are plenty of other parts of the case that did not add up. And at the end of the day, this sentence had been vacated, and they were able to continue to pursue this not only in the criminal area, but in the civil as well. And without that technology, this person couldn't have become the champion for this individual who was wrongfully in the wrong place. And now they have a new lease on life that they should have had the whole time. And so to me, I am incredibly privileged to have been a teeny tiny piece of that person's larger story and hope to really continue to do so with our program.
Sounds like justice to me. So this webinar is sponsored by the College of Law Practice Management. Maya and I are fellows of the college. The college has an amazing award called the Michael Mills Innovation Award, and Maya is going to tell us a little bit about that. The deadline is coming up, and there is cash prize money.
Yeah, no, I am delighted to be able to share it. Basically, I want to make sure that everyone knows about it and can spread the word. With the Innovaction Awards were refocused a couple of years ago to celebrate innovation that specifically supports access to justice. So it's named after their late and very beloved former president Michael Mills and his contributions. So the monetary prize is $10,000, and it is built to recognize innovation leaders globally, and they have to be early in their journeys. I believe it's 3 years or less in terms of. But that was last year. So I actually just want to make sure to I should probably have checked that before we started talking about it. But anyone that you think of that would be a good person to enter and can demonstrate how access to justice is at the center of their innovation, please encourage them uh, to submit an application. I believe that the deadline is December 11th. So we have a little bit of time still. And for more information, just check out the website.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a great commercial. I'll just add that the applicants have to be either a nonprofit, a law school, or a government agency. And so with that, I will also remind you that after this webinar, there will be 2 quick survey questions that we would appreciate very much that you answer. We also would like you to watch for details of our January Futures Forum session, which will feature Michelle DeStefano. She is the author of Leader Upheaval, A Guide to Client Centricity, Culture Creation, and Collaboration. And finally, the early bird registration deadline for the college's 2026 annual meeting and futures conference entitled Leading in the Intelligent Era, Human Judgment, Shared Leadership, and the Future of Legal Service will be held in New York City, February 23rd to February 25th. And that deadline for early bird registration ends December 1st. Again, you can find more information on the college website. And I'd like to thank Glenn, Maya, and Jaclyn for giving their time today to this phenomenal webinar. Thank you so much. I know it will be highly watched on demand, so please tell your friends and colleagues that they can watch it even if they missed it live today. And you are all really inspiring, and we thank you for everything that you do to help expand access to justice. We know it's not always easy, so thank you for taking this path and for sharing your stories with us today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure's ours.